This is Cyber Brief. If you care about what's getting broken on the internet, this is your weekly top 5. 3 of this week's 5 CVEs are listed in CISA's Known Exploited Vulnerabilities catalog. The rest score critical. This is the Active Exploitation Edition. On the list this week, Checkpoint, Oracle, and Microsoft, week of June 15, 2026, starting at number 5. Number 5. A critical flaw in Microsoft's Visual Studio Code could let an outsider silently seize elevated control over a network. Visual Studio Code is the development environment used by software engineers to write, test, and run code. It sits at the heart of how modern software gets built. The flaw here involves 3 compounding weaknesses. The software fails to properly validate input. It may rely on hard-coded credentials. It's missing authorization checks in key places. Together, those gaps could allow an attacker operating over a network to escalate their privileges, meaning they could start with little or no legitimate access and end up with far greater control over the affected system than they should ever have. Privilege escalation is particularly serious in a development environment. Elevated access there can translate into the ability to tamper with source code, intercept builds, or move deeper into an organization's infrastructure. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because this flaw is reachable over a network, any organization where Visual Studio Code is exposed or accessible across a network boundary could be at risk. The combination of missing authentication checks and hard-coded credentials means an attacker may not need valid user credentials to begin. Once privileges are elevated, the consequences for a development pipeline could be significant. Anyone using Microsoft's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. Up next. Number 4. A path traversal flaw in Cisco's SD-WAN manager lets authenticated attackers overwrite any file on the system and potentially enabling further compromise of the affected system. Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN Manager is the centralized web-based control panel that organizations use to configure, monitor, manage their entire SD-WAN network fabric. The flaw lives in its file upload process. When a user uploads a file through the web interface, the software does not properly validate the file path supplied by the user. That means an attacker can craft a special HTTP request to a specific API endpoint and direct a file to land anywhere on the underlying operating system, not just where uploads belong. Once an attacker can write arbitrary files to the server's file system, they can plant a file position to escalate their access all the way to root, which is the highest level of control on the system. From that position, they would have unrestricted access to the server running the entire SD-WAN management plane. An authenticated attacker could create or overwrite files on a Cisco Catalyst SD-WAN Manager system remotely. This one is already being exploited, so anyone using Cisco's products should make sure they have installed the latest security update. Halfway there. Number 3. A memory flaw buried deep in Windows networking could let an attacker on the same network silently seize elevated control of any affected machine. Windows TCP/IP is the core component responsible for handling all network communication on a Windows machine. It's the foundation that nearly everything online depends on. The flaw here is a heap-based buffer overflow, which in plain terms means an attacker can intentionally write more data than the system expects into a reserved memory area, causing it to spill over into adjacent memory. That overflow, according to the advisory, could allow an unauthorized attacker to elevate their privileges on the target system. Privilege escalation means an attacker who may already have a foothold, who can craft the right kind of network traffic, could climb from a low-access position up to a much higher level of control. The attack surface is Windows TCP/IP stack itself, meaning the exposure comes through the network layer rather than through a file or web interface a user has to open. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because the attack vector is described as adjacent network, anyone sharing a network segment, a corporate office floor, a hotel Wi-Fi, a university campus network, could potentially be within reach of an attacker attempting to exploit this. This class of flaw, if exploited, could allow an attacker already present on that shared network to gain elevated control over an unpatched Windows machine without the user doing anything at all. Anyone using Microsoft's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. Almost at the top. Number 2. PeopleSoft Enterprise. PeopleTools skips its authentication check. Callers reach elevated access without credentials. PeopleSoft Enterprise PeopleTools is the foundational layer that runs Oracle's PeopleSoft applications, the HR, finance, operations systems that large organizations depend on every day. The specific component at risk here handles updates environment management, the part of the platform responsible for managing system updates and configurations. The flaw is a missing authentication check, a critical piece of functionality that should demand credentials simply doesn't. An attacker with HTTP access to the network, no login, no special permissions, no help from any user, can send crafted requests straight to that component. If that succeeds, the result isn't just partial access. According to the advisory, a successful attack results in full takeover of PeopleSoft Enterprise people tools, meaning the attacker could read, alter, destroy data, and disrupt the system's availability entirely. This is in CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. It's already being exploited. Because the attack travels over HTTP with no credentials and with no additional prerequisites documented in the CVE, any organization whose PeopleSoft environment is reachable over a network, including internal corporate networks, could be exposed. Full system takeover means an attacker may gain control over the HR, payroll, financial data that runs through these platforms with impacts across confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This one is already being exploited, so anyone using Oracle's products should make sure they have installed the latest security update. And the top spot this week? Number 1. A logic flaw in Check Point's Quantum Spark gateways lets attackers connect to a VPN without ever supplying a valid password, and it's already being exploited. Check Point's Quantum Spark appliances and Gaia operating system include a remote access and mobile access VPN feature that authenticates users before granting them into a private network. The weakness sits in the certificate validation step, tied to an older key exchange protocol, CISA KEV. Due to a flaw in the authentication logic, an unauthenticated remote attacker can send a specially crafted connection request that sidesteps the password check entirely. What they gain is a fully established VPN tunnel, meaning they land inside the network as though they were a legitimate, credentialed user. From that position, they could reach internal systems, sensitive data, other connected resources that would normally be walled off from the outside world. The attack requires no account credentials and no help from anyone inside the organization. This is in CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. It's already being exploited. The attack comes in over the network remotely. Because it requires no credentials and no user interaction, anyone with access to the VPN endpoint could attempt it. Any organization running one of the affected Quantum Spark appliances and exposing remote access to the internet should treat this as an immediate priority. A successful exploit could allow an outsider to move through the internal network as a trusted user. This one is already being exploited, so anyone using Check Point's products should make sure they have installed the latest security update. That's the top 5 for this week. Whether you're here to triage your patching queue or just to stay sharp on the evolving threat landscape, if this brief added value, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm push this content to more people who care about security. Drop a comment if there's a CVE we should have covered or one you've already seen in the wild. That's how we build a better watch list together. New Cyber Brief shorts drop every weekday, and the new top 5 lands every Thursday afternoon. Until next week. Cyber threats don't wait. Neither should you. Subscribe.